There we go. So watermarks, eh? Let's talk a little bit about watermarks and signatures and art. So before we dive into how to do, I'm going to show you how to do a really quick, uh, just a name watermark, and then also a graphic watermark in Lightroom, and how to save that as a preset. The tutorial I make is going to show you how to save 8 presets from a transparent PNG, so that you have one that's white that can go into all 4 corners and one that's black that can go into all 4 corners. And then how to adjust its transparency, because having one watermark with a constant transparency is often a distraction, especially with pure white. It doesn't always work well on images. But the controversy rages on. On the internet, people say, oh, I'll never always watermark my images, and they put watermarks across spaces of people and across their images. And it makes the viewer's experience less enjoyable, much less enjoyable. And I like having a watermark on images to places that strip the metadata. Like, so Facebook strips your image file so people can't look at who made the image. Your copyright information is stripped, your metadata, your file info. I love Google Plus because I can always look at the settings of an image. And I really miss that, especially in a teaching capacity, being able to look at the settings of an image without somebody having to post them on the images. Just a note, it's a good idea, I think, on our platform to get used to posting at least the ISO, shutter speed, and depth of field, just to, when we're asking for feedback, just so that we don't have to ask about it if it's necessary. But I find that watermarks and signatures are good on websites that orphan the images or strip out the metadata. I don't find that watermarks prevent theft or people from using things improperly. I think people that don't have integrity are just going to take images anyway. And we can decide how much energy we want to invest in pursuing that. We talked about a site called pixie.com, and they will show you wherever they can see your images online and offer to pursue real infringements on your behalf, and they take a cut. It might not be a bad idea to check that site out. I personally don't have the bandwidth for it unless I become aware of a serious infringement, like by a commercial corporation or a company that has the ability to reward me. If somebody's just used it on a blog or for an educational purpose, I'm not going to pursue it usually. If somebody has taken it and called it their own, and it's not, I'll ask for a takedown. Absolutely. I think that's the utmost of lack of integrity. That's true theft, image theft, to call something yours that isn't yours, that you didn't create. So that's kind of my perspective on it. Anybody else have a thought or two about it, or kind of align with that more or less? The idea of watermarks can be useful. Another place I like watermarks is in public slideshows. On the ship, for example, Julie, you've been on the ship. When we do ask people to submit images for a public slideshow, we tell them that they're okay if they want to put a small watermark in the corner, but that the slideshow itself, except for doing a freeze frame and screen grab, you can't grab anything high resolution off of a slideshow. But we do tell them if they want to put a small watermark on the corner, they can. And I do occasionally on slideshows that are group slideshows, so people know who took the picture. So if we have 10 people contributing to one slideshow, it's nice to know. People are curious. They want to know, is that Ron's image or is that Julie's image? Is that Marjorie's image? Sometimes we can tell right off the bat, and other times we don't know right away. So that's
another benefit of having a good watermark is to use it, not just in the photos, but in, like you said, presentations and letterheads and etc. So it's your brand identity, basically.
Yeah, that's a good point, Vesta. So even if you don't want to put it in the corner of your images, it might not be a bad idea to have a PNG signature made for you. whether you use a site like PhotoLogo that does something that feels kind of like you, or you have your real signature. I'm going to show you, I have my own real signature done. And I did that in Photoshop, but I forget exactly how I did it. Now I just asked my daughter to do it in InDesign and do a vector and make it real slick. But it's not hard to even, Fiverr.com to have somebody to do that for you. Just send them a good signature, and they can make a PNG file for you or vectors that you can import. I also hired a graphic artist to do my logo. I mentioned that before, and you'll see my logo, many of you had before, in the examples I'm about to show you. And so I think a logo is important for branding. And while we're on the topic of branding, I'll go down that rabbit hole. I also believe that your brand is not my dog is scratching the door. He's just inconsolable. I'm going to let him in so he can come and lie down. 1 second. Otherwise, I'll just keep getting distracted. Shadow, can you read recording in progress? Working from home. He can't read the sign. It says recording in progress. You're not allowed to disturb me right now.
I have a dog like that.
I'm going to have to teach him. I'll have to put the sign lower where he can read it or something. So your brand isn't your colors, and it isn't your logo. If we were not, like if we were a corporation like Nike and they have the logo and they have that saying, just do it, those things are all brand associated. But the brand isn't the logo itself, although that gives some brand recognizability. The brand is kind of the feeling you get. Like Apple has a logo of an apple, so we have brand recognition. But what we love about Apple is that reputation for consistent quality and a look or design style. And so we attach those things to it. So a brand is more about the words that are attached, or the ideas or thoughts that are attached to something that we use. Like if we say the term Porsche, right? Or Ferrari, we get these impressions of sports cars, and we attach a feeling to it. We attach words to it, like expensive or rare. So your brand is actually part of your character. So when I boil that down, brand is character. And so I want my brand to reveal my brand words like integrity or growth or mentoring or guiding, teaching, compassion, encouragement, like these words that I feel wrap around my own brand. So when I had the logo made, Lena, who designed it, chose a hazel tree, and the tree with roots represents being rooted and growth and the mentoring, and really felt that it really spoke to my particular brand, and I happen to agree. I embraced it and I use it everywhere now. A signature can be part of your brand. If you're doing fine art prints, it's nice to have a little signature brand in the logo. And that's a nice way to do it. I'm going to pop over to screen share. Oh, Ulrich, he needs a recommendation.
Yeah, I think,
Yeah, he's going to need to get a camera and microphone because his
oh, I thought, sorry.
Recommend, if you just want an all-in-one, a Logitech C920 or a C930. They're not super cheap, they're not super expensive, but they're high quality and they have a good microphone. So that's a Logitech C920 or C930. And that's HD quality. Otherwise, I'm going to jump into this tutorial. I'm going to do a screen share. I'm going to do it backwards. I'm going to go on my HD. Let's see if we can break technology here. We're going to go onto screen 2 today. So what you're going to see, move this back over here. And I am going to turn my video off so it doesn't show up on the recording. There. what you're going to see is a picture of, these are horses on Sable Island, full of, and what they call a band, a family band. There's over 500 or about 500 horses on Sable Island off the coast of Halifax, Nova Scotia. And I think it's about 190 miles, nautical miles off the coast, on a sand dune with grasses and flowers and a few little pond areas. And I was very fortunate to be able to, in 2019 or 2020, I forget now, land there twice in a 3-week period and get some photographs. And so I'm very fortunate to be able to do that. But I'm going to use this image to show you how to do, I'm going to have a couple images because I wanted one with a kind of confusing background and one with a white background. There's another one actually, but that wasn't the one I wanted. But there's one leaving Sable Island. And there's one there again with a, we can show an example of both, because what color do you use for a logo? Because sometimes white's not the right answer, right? So let's look at this one, where I think white would be the right answer. I think a black logo would mix in. So what I'm going to do is in Lightroom, when we go into the export dialog, and so we want to export this image. For some reason, it's compressing everything on me. That is funny. So down here is export. I can choose it from the right-click menu. While I'm in the library module, I can also choose it right here. But we don't see that when we're in the develop module. So if you're in the develop module and you want to export, that right-click, that's a scaling issue I'm having, because now I'm using my 4K monitor, and that's why I got to scroll down here to get to that. But it's also here on the right-click menu. So we'll say export. And it's going to pull up a dialog, and I'll move this over. And just let me know, give me a nod that you can see my export dialog. Yeah, good. And so this isn't going to be about a whole bunch of things. I don't have all my presets loaded here in this version of Lightroom for some reason. I don't know why. I thought I was loading my right catalog, but all my presets aren't loaded, but that doesn't matter. And so I'm going to export to the desktop. I'm not going to even put it in a folder. I'm not going to rename it, and I'm just going to tell it to give me 75% quality sRGB and resize to the longest edge 1920, which is a HD 1920 by 1080 if it's this format. But 1920 on the longest side. Sharpen for, where's my sharpen for? Again, scaling. Sharpen for screen standard. I think Lightroom does a fantastic job of basic sharpening to give you what you're looking at. It does a really good job. And so I just don't mess with it. I include my metadata, and I don't remove personal information or location data. I just leave that in there. But watermark, and here's where we want to go. We want to go to watermark. We want to click here. We want to say edit watermarks. I'm actually glad this is fresh, that I don't have a lot of stuff loaded. Like normally I have a list, a whole huge list of different things I can choose here. So today we're going to actually create a watermark. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to choose from an image I have made of my logo. So I click choose here. And I know that it's in my drive. It's in this folder in branding, marketing, and web, in logos and branding. And it's down here. So I'm going to pick, and I have a white logo and a black logo. And so I'm going to pick a 600, because I'm just doing small in the corner, 600 pixel. Start with a white logo and choose. And so now you see it moved it from text to graphic. So now I have a graphic, and you won't be able to see this right away, but let me expand this window right here. There it is there. Now we can change the size of that over here. So if we scroll down, there's all kinds of things we can do. And one of the things is we can change the size to put it down in the corner. And I usually like to type in, so if I'm doing something for Facebook, I actually like it at 12, number 12. That's my Facebook size. For slideshows where it's large on a wall, I choose 9. I move it down much smaller because 12 actually, when you're looking at a big slideshow, that shows up pretty big. And I like 9. And so that's going to show up in the corner. In a second, we're going to see how that looks. But we also have the ability to change the opacity here from 0 all the way up to 100. And this image, I wish I could make this window a bit bigger. I mean, I'm kind of like, really, guys? Like, I guess I can always drag it, but I want big. Yeah, there, I can see it down there. And most of the time, I like my logo in the lower right corner. And down here, we can change which corner it's in. See, we can put it in the upper corner, in the upper left corner, lower left, lower right, or anywhere in between. We can even alter a little bit of where that is by using these insets. See, I can move it in a little bit more and up a little bit more. And I generally do, I usually have these at 2 and 2 to move it in and up a little bit. In this image, I don't think so, but if you keep consistent, then images that you load are always going to be kind of the same. So if you pick a bunch of images, you want to be consistent. Like if you're making a slideshow and you're submitting some for a group slideshow, don't start messing with this. Kind of leave it in one spot. And I do like an inset of 2, just because it takes it off of the edge. And I'm going to move this down just to 1, so it stays down near the bottom. So that's where I'm going to leave it. I'm going to put my size at 12. And in this image, I like it at 100%. Now, what I want to do is I want to save this as a preset up here. So I'm going to say save settings as a new preset up in the drop down up here. And then I'm going to say logo, white, and then that's lower right. That's all I'm going to do. I'm going to call it logo white lower right. And say create. Now it's a choice in my drop down. I can choose it right there. And pop it on there and then say done. Down here in the corner. You notice it's changed from save to done because it would have asked me to save anything. If I make a change here, it's going to ask me to resave it. But let's just say done. And then export. Oh, I forgot to say show in Finder, so now I'm going to have to look for it on my desktop. So photos, okay. So there it is there, the picture with the logo over here in the lower. We'll just zoom in on that. And there's a nice little logo. And if you don't want to do that, there's another thing that you can do, but I just want to show you what I'm going to teach you is to create one for each corner and one for each color. So let's say I wanted to do this one and I say export. Let's try again. Oh, so I'm just going to click the export because it's not right away in my download. So I'm going to say export, and everything should stay the same as it was last time. And I'm going to say watermark, but I'm going to say edit watermarks because I don't think the lower right white is going to work on a white background too well. So I'm going to say edit watermarks. Lower right white was the last watermark used. And we can see it's not effective here. So no matter what I do with opacity, it's not going to make it work. So I'm going to choose a new one. I'm going to choose my black 600 image, choose. There it is there in black at 12. Now I find black is too strong. It's quite bright. So I'm going to take the opacity down to something like that. I just don't want that to be the first thing you look at. we know the area of highest contrast moves forward. So we're going to look at that. And I can make it lighter, maybe something like that. I'm saving at 12, like I say, for Facebook or for demonstration purposes. But let's say I want this over in the lower left. So what I'm going to do now is, see, I've changed everything, so it's going to ask me to save this. I don't know if that's new, because it's not letting, I can't just say done, but I am just going to go up here just to be sure and say, save current settings as a new preset. And I'm going to say logo, lower left, black. In Lightroom, I just need a white and a black, and create. Eventually, if I go through this, I'm going to have a number of them. Either I just want the two lower corners, but now I have two choices, and I can switch between them right here. So, but I want to say lower left black and say done. And now I can say export. And so that's going to come onto my desktop, and here it is here. And there's the image, and there's the logo in the lower left. Finally, before we go on, I'm just going to export one more time on another image. And I'm going to say export. If you don't have a logo made and you just want to be identified, one way to do this, I did this for years. I did it for a long time. So I go into the export dialog, and I'm going to go down to, I'm going to go down to, I want to cover one thing before I go into this next part. Let's say I want it to be the white logo, but I want to change the opacity. So instead of just saying export, because I picked the lower logo, it's going to remember the last settings. I always go into Edit Watermarks and adjust my opacity to what's right for that image. Then I don't want to resave it. I don't want to save it as another preset. This is very important. When I make a change on opacity, I have to always go up, and I wish they would have one more button here with export with current setting, like just right there. Just be done with it. But they don't. We got to go up to the left here. This is important to remember, and just say update preset logo white lower right. Now it says done, so I can click done and say export. And that will export it with my new settings. So I just wanted to cover that. Every time we want to change the opacity, we want to go in there, we want to edit watermark, we want to make our change, and then if it says save, don't hit it, because it's going to ask us to save it as a new watermark, and we're going to end up with two of the same watermark, just with different opacities, and then it'll get too complicated. So just go up there and update preset, and then say done, and then you can export. Well, what I want to do with this image is not that. I want to go into Edit Watermarks, choose Text, and we're going to be able to choose something pretty simple. You can see here it's got a shadow, it's got a copyright, it's got a name. You can say copyright, or you can do whatever you want there. But I'm going to go there with that, and I'm going to say what I do today. And so I find that 12 is too big for that. I'm going to go down. Let's choose, I went to 0.9 for some reason, 9. There we go, put it to 9. And when I'm using text, I actually don't like the shadow. I prefer it more clean. And then again, you can change the opacity however you want. And I don't mind that, but you can choose from any of your installed fonts. And there's lots of them here. You can choose whatever you want. Adobe Clean's a nice font for that, but you can see that maybe I want to even put it down to 8 when it's like that. Or you might want to put copyright www.ronclifford.com, just so it points to your website. So I think I'm going to actually do that here. I'm going to change my text to say that. So where do I type it? It's been so long since I've done this. Choose no text there, Adobe Clean, style regular. I don't think I type right on it. I type somewhere. Where's my
Type in
typing?
the bottom box,
Down bottom of the box.
just below the image.
Well, there it is. Yeah. Thank you. And so I'm going to leave that copyright and just put in my whole thing there. And then I'm going to say save that, and I'll save that as, I'll just save it for what it is. That's it. This is now the same process. I can just say show and explore when it's done, so I know. And there you go. So now you can do a white watermark. And again, we can say done because I already set the opacity. But if we had come in here and I needed to change the opacity of the watermark, while I'm in watermark, I wouldn't say done. I would go up and say update current preset. And so it's supposed to open up the window. Didn't I say open the window? It didn't do it for me. For whatever reason, I didn't get my export. Let's do that again. Export. Show and explore. Oh, I clicked on it, not export. So there, export. There it's about to pop into view. There's the file there. And there's my watermark in the corner, my text mark. Let's go over to Photoshop, shall we? So that's high level. You can kind of get where I'm going with that. I'm going to break that down about the resaving and everything. But in Lightroom, that's just the basic watermarking dialog. And that little thing that you got to remember that for each image, if you're going to change your opacity, to not save it as a new watermark, but to update current watermark if you want to keep it as your white watermark in the lower right corner or whatever corner you use. So let's open up Photoshop. So let's say we're working on an image in Photoshop. Edit in Photoshop 2020. And here we're going to create a brush that's a watermark based on your logo from your PNG file. And this is a fun one. Oh, see, I remembered I was working on brushes last time. I ran into a glitch here, interestingly. It's running a little slower because I'm in a Hangout and it's taxing my system. Oh, see, there it is right there. I should have reset everything so I could surprise you all. Go to my pointer. It is having a serious scaling problem when I hit Control or Command 0. It's not scaling to fit. That's interesting. Okay, so we will just manually do it. So I'm having my own little set of issues here today. The scaling. I am going to unscreen share, move me over to the other desktop and do this again. Just be patient, 1 second. I was trying to fix scaling issues today and it was driving me bananas. So there, we're over there. Yeah, so Control Command 0. Let me see. That's working. Perfect. Okay. So we don't need the extra layer this time. And now I gotta change my screen share. I am so frustrated with technology. Like, you get a 4K monitor to take advantage of all those pixels, and you can't do tutorials unless you downgrade it to 1080. So you guys are seeing that picture, can you not?
Yeah.
Okay. So here we are leaving Sable Island. Actually, this is Katie Quinn. She lives in Bradford. Oddly, we never see each other. We live 20 minutes apart, and we never see each other unless we're in places like Sable Island or the Arctic. It's kind of crazy. So let me just show you what I'm going to do here. So what we want to do is we want to create a brush. So when you grab your brush, normally it's on a brush preset. Let me just open up general brushes. So we have a round brush. And so with a brush, if I was to take a soft round brush and a color like white and using 100%, that's what happened. I would brush. It's like brushing spray paint on our canvas. But we can actually make this a graphic, which is really very interesting. I think it's very interesting. So let's open our PNG file. Well, you know what, we're on a signature. Let's start with we'll go to the signature second. We're gonna start with the PNG file. So let's open up, and I'm gonna open up a higher resolution file. And here's the glitch I found. If I open up a black PNG, and it's okay in Photoshop, this actually works, I can go up to my edit menu, and I can go down to this part here that says define brush preset. And it's going to open up a dialog, obviously on my other monitor, so it confuses me, here. And then I can give it a name. So Ron Clifford logo 1600 PNG in black. And I'm going to say, okay. But the fact that it's black doesn't matter in Photoshop. We just need the PNG to load. And black is probably the best. And say, okay. And now I have, if we look up in the corner, it's hard to see, but there is a symbol of that logo. And they've changed the way this all displays, but there's a symbol of that logo. Strangely, it shows the brush dynamic and not the logo in the selected file. But it's there, it's my signature, and you can see it. And using my wheel or my square bracket keys, I can make it bigger or smaller. Now, because we don't have a percentage or a number to repeat the size on an image, what we end up doing in Photoshop is just looking at, see how when I'm using the square bracket keys, it's going down by hundreds until it gets a little smaller, then it goes down by 25. But after 200 or 300, it goes by 400 or 500. So just remember that we don't get it to be exactly the same ratio in Photoshop like in Lightroom on the canvas. In Lightroom, it's scaled to the canvas. In Photoshop, it's scaled according to our brush size. And so now let's go over to our image. And as you can see, I still got this logo here. It's at 100% flow and 100% opacity. What you don't want to do is plop it right on the image. Why did it go white? Does anybody know? I saved a black image. Why did it go white? If you'll notice, it's a brush.
Yeah.
And my brush foreground color is white. It will be whatever color my foreground is. See that? And so if I press D for defaults, and I can go between using my X key, white or black, I can make it white or black. See that? But the reason I don't want to do it on my background or on my plate is because I can now not control the opacity of that particular logo, right? So what I want to do, I'm going to back out of that. We're going to get rid of those. Hi, Sue, glad you could join us. What I want to do with this new brush that I just made and saved as a defined preset is simply create a new layer. And now I can put that brush on my new layer. Let's say I want to do it in white. And there it is there. And I can just move the opacity of that layer up or down to what I want. I actually like it at full white. I think it's fine. Or I want to test black, so I can turn that layer off, make a new layer. Let's say I want to see what it looks like in black. Press my X key to switch it to black and stamp it on there. There it is in black. But watch, don't drag. You get funny things when you drag. There it is in black. And again, I can change the opacity to be a little more appropriate to the image. And so we can always change the size, either using the square brackets or I use the wheel on my Wacom tablet to change the size, and I can place that wherever I want. The only problem is it's not like Lightroom. It's not always going to be identical in the placement unless you create yourself some kind of a template you load. But this works quite well in Photoshop. And then you can just place that logo wherever you think it should be. And so that's creating that in Photoshop. But what about your signature? And so let's Control Z out of there, Control Z. Okay, so on your signature, let's go over here again. And let's, or not even over there, it doesn't matter where. We're going to file, we're going to open our logo PNG image that I had made for myself. And so here I should have something called signatures. Where did I put it? Logos and branding, it should be here. Oh, there, it's right at the top, but it's got a date on it. I don't know why. So in signatures, what I did, and I'll just show you guys what I did. For example, I had written out a number of signatures and I scanned that page. And then I used selection tools to make it. But in Photoshop isn't the best program for that, actually. Let me show you another file, open. There's another bunch of signatures I tried with a different marker. And that one actually was better as a marker. And so I picked the nicest one, I cut it out, and I saved it as a PNG on a transparent background. I'm not going to go through that whole process. I just want to show that it's possible by loading a PNG of your signature. If you're not sure and you got a friend that works in graphic design, they can walk you through how to make a PNG out of that pretty quickly on a transparent background. I'll cover that in my more in-depth tutorial. So what I want to do is load a different one, actually. So it's not that one or that one. I want to load a different one. So let's go into Open, go into Signatures, and I'm going to pick this signature, I think, right here, although I can't see it completely. And unlike a Mac, I can't just hit my space bar to see the preview of that. But I'm pretty sure it's that one. So I'm going to open that. Yeah, that looks pretty good. And you can see it's kind of rough and tumble. It was done scratchy on rough paper on purpose. I wanted a kind of a rough logo. So I'm going to get out of my brush here. And so I am going to be able to show you how to save this as a PNG right now. I am going to using, because it's not a PNG, I didn't load a PNG, I loaded a file. Let me show you how to do it as a PNG. I am going to try, here we go. I always try something new in a Hangout when I shouldn't try something new. Let's try this object selection tool, this new one in Photoshop, rather than the magic wand. And I'm going to go around my logo. And it did it. It selected my logo. See that? And right now, we know that Control or Command J will duplicate a layer unless there's a selection. Then it'll move the selection onto its own layer. Watch, Control or Command J. It moved that selection onto its own layer. Turn that layer off, and what do we have? A signature on a transparent background. So we can actually delete the background. Now, let's go to our brush tool. And we want to edit, define brush preset. Yeah, I don't want to save it as 001. I just want to save it as Ron's signature, let's say. There. And then say OK. So now it's a brush preset. I can choose this in my presets, my brush presets. There's my my white soft brush that we talked about earlier. Oh, no, actually, it's black because I have the color black chosen. But if I go up here, I can choose that signature now. There it is there. See that? So now that we have that signature as a brush, let's go over to our image. And if we want it to be white, what do? We change to white as our brush color. Our flow and opacity right now are 100%. And we put it on a blank layer. Remember we talked about that. We're not going to put it on the image because we can't alter the opacity without altering the opacity of the image. We need to put it on a layer. And once we have that layer, we'll put it right there. There's my signature on my image. And if I need to adjust the opacity, I can. If I want to put a black one on, let's Control Z out of here. I just press my X key to switch my foreground color to black and make it a black one. My signature is right there on my picture. Pretty cool. So that's how to do that in Photoshop. I am going to make myself seen again. There we go. Scaling issues, eh? Isn't that kind of a bummer that the scaling, I'm having these scaling difficulties between monitors?
Wow.
Like, I always have to do my editing on my 1080 monitor, not my 4K monitor, for demos. It's kind of weird.
Wow.
Okay, that's why I had to peek on that to stop the light glaring in my eyes so that I could do my
That's-
editing.
Probably because your buffer is for 4K is different than your buffer for your 1080.
Yeah, I don't think it's a buffer issue. It is literally the scaling algorithms. Windows 10 is awful, depending on the program and how well somebody has written the program to scale between monitors. And you'd think a company like Adobe would have this down. But on Windows 10 now, I turned on a setting yesterday to change how it scales, and I have to change it back, and I'm not going to do that in the middle of a hangout. I got to get the right setting. Windows 10's default setting isn't working for me on my 4K monitor.
Wow.
It's just because I want to work with two monitors. I just want to show off.
But what are the disadvantages of a 4K?
The only disadvantage that I know of is scaling issues when trying to do a screen share and teach people.
No.
When there's scaling issues, when it's really small, it's so small. Let me show you. I'm just going to show you. I'm going to screen share. Screen number 2. I'm going to bring Lightroom back up.
Well, there was some talk, and I didn't quite understand, that you don't want to sharpen with a 4K.
You know, you probably
It's a
have
learning curve. It's a learning curve or something. You know, that's
Yeah,
really.
because it's not going to be the same. And it's 4K is showing you a much bigger image. Like if you drag that image onto a 1080, it's huge on the screen. Like you're more than 100% zoomed it just the scaling changes. So it's probably a really good valid point. So let me show you. Why is Lightroom not showing up on that? Let me just share. Are you guys seeing Lightroom?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so let me move that over. I'm gonna show you. I'm gonna change my scaling. I'm gonna move that over here. So display settings. You see how the lettering looks like the same on a 1080 monitor, right?
Mm-hmm.
But understand that I have this set, my scale layout to 200%. If I go down to 100% and make that full screen,
Jeez. Wow.
I can't even with my glasses. You see that? That's the difference, Ed and Richard. So if I was sharpening here, you see the difference in the scale of this image compared to what is normal? Like this is normal. Yeah, my color correction just turned on. And so this is the issue with scaling. So I have to go in. I'm going into my display settings on my other monitor. I'm going to set it at 200%. And now that matches. Look what happened to the image. There, it came back. It snapped back. It didn't do that on Photoshop. But now it looks normal, like it would. It's just going to take a second for it to load my color profile. See how blue that is? It's terrible. In a few seconds, it'll load the right color profile and it'll be blue again, or it'll be normal again. But yeah. So that's the issue of working with two monitors of different resolutions. And so I guess the answer is I need two 4K monitors. Is that what the answer is to that?
Adobe 1998, yeah.
Yeah. There, you just saw that snap back to the color profile. That's the difference between an uncalibrated monitor and a calibrated monitor. I'll come back again. So let me stop recording. Thanks for watching 2 Minute Tuesday, by the way. And we'll stop that recording.